Hello and welcome to part 2. Some of you may be a little confused as to, Erika, you're here again at this part 2 in a different place. Unfortunately, we had some really bad connectivity issues, so I'm kind of redoing this whole part 2 right now. So I hope that you're kind of stayed tuned, and there will be a third part coming up. So, hello again. We're actually here celebrating Women's Equality Day. And why are we celebrating women's equality? Well, today was actually the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which intended to give most women the right to vote. Of course, many of us may know now that this wasn't really true for most women, especially women of color that weren't white or from really prestigious families. This actually continued for Native women and even a lot of African American women for years on out after the passage of this amendment, where voter suppression tactics and other fear tactics prevented them from voting. And some may still argue that some of these fear and prevention voter tactics still persist today. I don't know, something to think about. So I wanted to actually share, like some of my other colleagues, about her story that happened here at humble Redwood State Park, because we hear so much about the Save the Redwood League men, but seldom about the women that had something to do from saving these wonderful, majestic redwoods from loggers. At the turn of the 20th century, believe it or not, most women were not allowed to get involved outside of the domestic sphere. Can you imagine not being allowed to vote or be involved in issues that actually matter to you? I know that personally I would have a hard time believing that, but this was a real reality for a lot of women back in the day. But despite all this, women still banded together and thought of creative ways to get involved in their community and to be leaders. And so all over the country, women's groups were formed. In the 1900s, when the California Federation of Women's Club was first formed, they actually just had 2 standing committees, one for education and one for forestry. This initial interest in forestry actually helped to be really instrumental in the early conservation movement, because they had already laid a lot of the groundwork and grassroots work and made good connections between conventional gardening and botany to forestry conservation. So how can you enjoy your garden or have all these wonderful native flowers if we don't protect the larger habitats that they live in? Hold on 1 minute. I think we're having some people that are gonna come, and so that's why Griff went to go check them. And so, sorry. So, empowered by these progressive era movements, these women often led nations' campaigns and for the preservation of wildlands and a lot of historical sites, like here at humble Redwood State Park. Previously, women-led efforts to establish a national park here in Humboldt County actually were dormant for a while, and it wasn't until men joined the movement that this sort of it re-sparked back their momentum. And so women were smart, and they knew that the time was now. And so with this new momentum being sparked up again by the male-formed Save the Redwood League, they knew that their time to get back on this movement was then. So the very next day, on August 9th, 1919, the first meeting of the Humboldt County Women's Save the Redwood League happened. These women were actually prominent figures in their society, and they totally use this leverage so that they can get support for their own causes, which is so smart. You know, I feel like in any way that you have privilege or that you're empowered, it's always good to give back. So I commend a lot of these women for doing what they could for issues that matter to them. At first, the dues for this club were 50 cents, then lowered to 25 cents, and pretty soon, even the male chapter, or the male Save the Redwood League, wanted for them to join their organization. But in order to maintain their autonomy and to not become secondary chapter members, they just flat out refused to do this. These women stood at the forefront of the work for financial and land donations that's helped to save thousands of Northern California redwoods. In fact, some of the first land donations that secured women's footing in the protection of redwoods actually came from Humboldt County women. If you were checking out our post about the ratification of the 19th Amendment that we had at Humboldt Redwood State Park, you would also see some of the highlights of these women. So please make sure you check those out. They could not have done all of this just by themselves or just with the Humboldt County women. They used so much help from allies and outsiders and other supporters to help them spread their message and so that they can raise money in every way possible. In fact, one of the California Federation Women's Club greatest achievement lies here at our park at the California Federation of Women's Club Grove, which we were if you saw Shanna's video prior to this, and if you were at the beginning of my video last time before I did this one, I was actually there, but I had to move. But yeah, we have that grove because of them. The Federation members actually voted and they bought the deed for that grove and then gave it to the state. Like this, other women-led fundraising campaigns sparked throughout the nation and our state. In fact, other powerhouse women's conservation groups also sought the same thing and bought their own groves here at the park. These women's efforts in the Redwoods foster greater societal ambitions, buying them entrance to larger arenas like politics and public policy. Today, we celebrate these and all the women that because of their race or, culture, heritage, religion, skin color, were not allowed to be, in the history books and were overlooked. And so we thank you for the preservation of the coastal redwoods and also in this park. And in light of Women's Equality Day and the ratification of the 19th Amendment, we urge all of you women and just anybody to remember the sacrifices that the people and the social movements before you had to, fight for and had to endure in order for us to have the civil liberties and just, the rights that we have today, especially when it comes to our right to vote as women. And so exercise this right that you have. Get involved in any issues that matter to you. You don't have to vote in big elections. Sometimes voting locally actually makes more of an impact than the larger elections that are just like, the electoral college makes the decision. Sometimes just voting locally and just getting involved in your locality can do way more than you think. And so I end my program today with a big thank you for all the women and everyone that were a part of helping us bring Humboldt Redwood State Park. And so stay tuned for the last part that Griff will be doing about Laura Mahan. All right, so stay tuned. It'll be right after this.